Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome to a podcast. Not only is this a podcast, but it's our journey. A journey that we hope you want to ride out with us as we intend to educate you guys, inspire, talk about past and current experiences, and to make one thing, to stop judging others. Most importantly, stop judging yourself based on others' views and perceptions. With that said, you'll be hearing from me, myself, Austin Kirshner, but along with our journey on this podcast will be my mother, Kathy Kirshner, and my brother, Dylan Kirshner. With that said, welcome to Silencing of Stigma. We're going back to the roots.
Hey, this is Kathy doing this podcast by myself. Usually we have our co-host Austin, my son, myself, and my other son Dylan. Today I'm going to do this podcast on my own. We're actually on vacation, a little vacation here in Florida. I know with the COVID I'm not supposed to be in Florida, but I'm here and spend a lot of time on the beach. Spend a lot of time. I'm emotional, but thinking about Kyle. They always say it gets easier, but when we're in situations like this, it gets pretty difficult. He loved the beach. Last time I was here was with him at the beach. And I just wanted to thank everyone for all the positive comments that we've gotten over the past couple weeks. We're on episode 5 coming up this week, but we've reached out to so many people, and so many people have reached out to us, said how much they enjoyed the podcast, and that if we could keep continuing to do this, it's definitely a benefit. We always said from the beginning that we wanted it to just help one person, and I received a text message from a friend of mine, a co-worker from many years ago, who said that she tells my story about the death of Kyle to her son when he was young, and normally when you have a conversation, you talk about drugs and that they're bad. You spend about an hour of time telling them, you don't want to do drugs, kind of like what they learn in school. She was kind enough to share with me that she uses Kyle as a story and says the good things, things that Kyle did, some of the positive things, not necessarily the negative. And again, back to the stigma that kids that do drugs are bad. So I appreciate her reaching out to me and letting me know that we already saved her son. He takes it very seriously when she talks about it, and he uses Kyle as an example when he's communicating with his friends. So I want to thank her for that, for reaching out. And there's been so many other people that have reached out to us and said, what you're doing, I hope it heals you. You're so strong. And I can tell you that it's healing us. We're learning a lot about Kyle. People are sharing things and stories, which is always a good thing. I'm learning more. My story continues every time someone shares something with me. My story continues, so I appreciate that. Many different people that I don't know are reaching out, and we asked in one of my Facebook comments if there's a topic that someone wants covered to reach out, and we'll find somebody that can help answer those questions for us. And we've had several people, so we will be in contact with everyone that wants to participate. This is started by us, by my son. He came to me and asked me to help participate in this, but we don't need it to necessarily be just us. Like anybody that wants to talk as an outlet, anybody that can help us make this world a better place and understand stigma, not just with drugs, but other stigma as well. Mental health is another big issue that we'd like to dive into at some point as well. So again, thank you for everyone with the comments. We try to respond to everyone. If we don't respond to you, we eventually will when we get to it. If you're not already following the page, Austin has a page, Silencing of Stigma. That should be somewhere that you can get these podcasts every Sunday morning. So I just want to talk a little bit. I said we were on vacation. I was a little emotional speaking about Kyle and the beach, because that was a place where that was a family affair. We did that together. And even though he's not here, he's never forgotten. Like, he's on our mind every day. And so I just want to reach out, share a story. Their birthdays come and their death dates come and, holidays come, and it's hard for us. And the parents who lost their children, whether it's to drugs or any loss of a child, can tell you that we never forget our child. Like every day they're on our mind, and some days it's happy and some days it's sad. Today's a sad day for me, and that's okay. Like, I'm going to be better tomorrow. But I just want to share, when these holidays come around, lots of people don't know what to say to us. And the reason I'm bringing this up today on this podcast is because I was at the park probably about a week and a half ago, and one of the teachers from the high school asked me how Austin and Dylan were doing. He was a coach. He participated in the basketball program, and Austin and Dylan played basketball for high school, so he was aware of them. I wasn't aware at that point that he even knew Kyle. I thought he came after Kyle as a teacher. But he asked how Austin and Dylan were doing, and we talked a little bit about things and how things have changed. And then he said to me, Joe was standing beside me at the park, my husband, and he looked at us and he said, "How long has it been since Kyle passed away?" And I said, "Oh, it's been 6 years." And both my husband and myself got a smile on our face because he asked us about Kyle, and then he shared a funny story about Kyle in the bathroom at the high school, which I can totally picture. Kyle was picking on him for a pair of jeans that he had on. But he walked away, and we both smiled and looked at each other and said, "That's awesome. Like, somebody mentioned Kyle today." And so many people don't want to bring their names up because they're afraid that if we're happy, we're going to turn sad, or we're not thinking about him today, and they don't want to bring his name up. I can tell you, and any parent that loses a child, no matter what age, loves to hear their name and loves to hear a story and loves just to acknowledge. I mean, I was at dinner on his birthday and nobody said, "Oh, today's Kyle's birthday." It wasn't that they didn't know. They were like, "Oh, Kathy's not crying today," or "This must be a tough day for her, so I'm not going to mention his name." And that's okay. And I've learned to understand that people are uncomfortable with that and they don't know what to say, but it's okay to say their name, because you know what? If I cry when you say, "Hey, today's Kyle's birthday," how old would he be? If I cry, it's not tears of sadness, it's tears that somebody remembered Kyle today. So I just wanted to reach out. That's one of the topics that I wanted to talk about for the parents out there who lose their children. Please don't think for a minute that we forget that they passed. There's not a day that goes by. And if you make me cry, everybody that knows me knows I cry very easily. And that's okay. I don't look at that as a weakness. Sometimes they say it's a strong point. I always laugh with friends because they push their problems under the rug, and I'm an open book. If I'm sad one day, I'm going to be sad. If I'm happy one day, I'm going to be happy. And that's how the new world is for us after we lost Kyle. We can have a good day and we can have a bad day. And it's difficult. Even in my marriage, my husband struggles when I have a bad day because it's hard for him to see me that way. And I need to be his rock. And I'm learning that we can be strong and still have those days where we're going to cry. So that was just something that I wanted to share. I was thinking a lot on the beach today. I was walking up and down the beach looking at the families and the moms and the dads getting frustrated with their children. And I had to kind of laugh, and then I had a tear in my eye because I thought, gosh, I remember coming to the beach, 2 twins at the age of 1, and Kyle was 5. And for those that knew Kyle, he was a hellion. He was a hellion on the beach too. But that was our happy moments, and how stressed I used to get and be like, "Oh, is it nap time? Can we get off this beach?" To be walking today and seeing that and thinking, gosh, how grateful those parents should be to have that moment, because it can be taken away at any time. So just enjoy your kids, no matter what age they are. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place today. I'm very emotional, but I would give anything to have him sitting on the beach with us and laughing and being that pain in the ass that he always was. So, yeah, the beach is tough. Lots of thinking. Just wanted to share another quick story. Came up with the title Silencing of Stigma. We were trying to get some design to put on the webpage, and then we heard, that's really not important. You don't need all that fancy marketing stuff for what we're doing. Like, we're just out here trying to reach everybody and be real and honest and talk. But one of the things that we talked about was the initial silencing of stigma, which is SOS. And I said, why don't we create something where the O would include the circle of life, the tree, that people are familiar with. If you're not familiar with it, it's pretty popular. If you Google it, I'm sure you can find it. And we get to the condo that we're staying in, and we're sitting on a sofa, and we're talking about Kyle, and we're talking about signs, which is another podcast that we'll get into. There's so much to talk about, and I like to talk in case you didn't know. But I'm sitting on the sofa, and I look up at the picture behind the other sofa, and it's literally the tree of life. And we took a picture of it, and I had to laugh, and I was like, okay, Kyle's with us today, because that was something as a sign that I saw as a sign that he was with us and telling us, you know what, I'm here with you. He has a habit of doing that to me a lot. He sends me signs. Blue jays are a sign. Kyle's a blue jay, so when I see a blue jay, I'm like, okay, Kyle's with me. But he sends me all kinds of signs. Today on the beach, I was looking up at the sky, and I was like, I totally know that he's here right now with me. And we walked together on the beach. I did a lot of talking. I wish I would have had the microphone at that point because my mind was going crazy. I was just grateful that I had him for the short time. I look at Austin and Dylan on the beach, and Dylan's wife Tori. You heard Tori speak in one of the podcasts, and everybody's laughing and having fun, and I'm thinking Kyle would be the one that would be sitting on the beach waiting for me to get knocked down by a wave so that they could laugh at me. Yeah, so like I said, I'm all over the place here today, but it's real. Like everybody on these podcasts that respond say we like the honesty, we like how real and raw it is. Well, you're getting it. Today's a bad day. I could do this tomorrow and I could be laughing the whole time. As you saw, last week we had Dominic and Tio, and we did a lot of laughing, and people reached out to me and said, it's great that you're laughing about this. It's not a funny topic, but you can still find time to laugh. And we do find time to laugh. And, through the grieving process, everybody grieves differently. And I always said I'll never stop grieving, but I will have better days. And as time goes on, those who've lost their children, you find that as the days go on, it doesn't get easier, but it gets better. You're not crying every day. You spend a lot more time laughing and not feeling guilty about laughing. It's okay to laugh. We don't have to be sad for the rest of our lives. We can be grateful. I'm always kind of like a positive person, so I look at the situation. I've learned and I've read somewhere that a situation is neither positive nor negative. It's how each person looks at that situation. So I look at the situation with Kyle, and although it seems like it should probably be all negative, there's a positive to that. I had Kyle for 24 years in my life, and I'll see him again someday. So I look at it that way, like Kyle is in heaven for sure, and he's enjoying life without the struggles of addiction. And I'm here on earth, and someday I will meet and see him again for sure. So that's the positive. Like, I could have not had him. I could have had him for 5 years. I could have had him for 10 years, but instead I had him for 24 years. And so that's the positive of it. The other positive is I know that someday I'm going to see him again, just like I believe we're going to see all of our family members again. Just basically thank you to everybody. Remember that when you see that person that loses their child or loses a loved one, it's okay to mention their name. It's a great feeling to have that shared story. We learn stories. We're never going to not learn something about Kyle. Some of it's positive and some of it's like, okay, I didn't know he did that. But that's okay because that's part of his story, and he's not here to tell his story. So we're going to learn his story going forward. His friends have been very open with us, and while in the past, if they would have shared with me what some of them shared with me now, I would have been so disturbed by it. But because of what I've learned throughout the years, I'm not disturbed by it. I'm actually interested in it. People are afraid that it's going to take me down a dark hole learning about this and talking about this every week. But actually, it doesn't affect me in a negative way. Like, do I cry? Absolutely, I cry. Do I try to put all the pieces together? I sure do. But it's very healing for me to learn where his mind was and what he was doing, because I learned a few weeks ago that Kyle had a side of him that I never knew. So I thought I knew everything about Kyle. He shared very interesting stories with me. He called me mama, and he would sit there and argue with me and pretty much tell me things that I was like, wow, you're talking to your mother. And he would just laugh. But this is one topic that he never shared. And some of the stories that I'm hearing now, I'm like, wow, like, okay, I can handle that. Like, I understand. We learned with Dom and Tio, they were brothers. If you didn't listen to that podcast, I recommend it. It's one of our best ones so far. But that was our fourth one. They were brothers, and they used drugs together. And they share that in their story. And when I'm hearing that, I'm thinking, okay, Kyle didn't share that with Austin and Dylan. He didn't share with me. And so he kind of sheltered us from what he was doing. And that was interesting, learning the other stories of the other friends that he had. Like, what they were doing is totally different from what Kyle was doing with his brothers. Austin and Dylan always wanted a relationship with Kyle. And we learned, while they were brothers, we really didn't know what Kyle was doing. When he was around the house, he was fine. We had suspicions sometimes, like something's not right, and we questioned things, but he made sure that we didn't know about it. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know, because I spend a lot of time thinking, gosh, I met so many wonderful people that are in recovery that if Kyle would have opened up, I wouldn't have known at that point what to do to help him. But I do know one thing, that when I met these people in recovery, he would have fit in well with them, and he would have been a great fit for getting better. Kyle was a great person. He had great personality, and some of the kids that I spent time with that I met since his passing that are in recovery, they remind me of Kyle, and it drives me crazy. Like, I have to laugh. I met a couple young guys that were in a sober house. They always laughed and said, oh, she could be the sober mom, but really not, because they said I'd be crying all the time because I get too attached, and that's true. But I looked at them and I thought, wow, like, I can see Kyle could have got help here. He didn't. And, that's too bad for him, because some of these people are like great, great people. Like, they've taught me so much. They're patient with me. There's so much to learn. And that's why I wanted to do these podcasts, because I was blind to this. I had no idea what in the world was going on with drug addiction before this. And honestly, a little bit about my story, I didn't learn anything for the first 3 years. I sat in my kitchen after work. I went to work, put my whole life into work and outside activities I got involved in to keep my mind busy. That's how I functioned. And then I met someone who introduced me to the drug addiction part of it, and said, I will help you learn. What questions do you have? I will answer your questions. And it was 3 years later I met him. He worked with me, and we ended up going to a meeting, and that's where it started for me. I went to a meeting. The first meeting I went to was really interesting. When I walked in, I could have swore I saw Kyle sitting at the table. I didn't know what to expect, but when I left there, I felt that I learned a little bit more about my son, and it's just continued since then. 3 years now. I've been to several different meetings. I've been to some town halls that have been very interesting, educated. I've been to a couple group meetings. I did some 5K runs for a couple years. I'm looking forward to another one that's coming up here in a couple months in Kyle's memory. But there's so much to learn. And when Austin brought it to me and said, hey, let's do this, he said I had a sparkle in my eye. And he said when I talk to these folks and I interview people like Dom and Tio, like there's a spark in my eye. And that spark is Kyle, because I believe that I'm learning about Kyle. I'm trying to help for Kyle in Kyle's memory. And the topics are endless. They're endless. One of the ones I'm really interested in getting started is interviewing moms. Like, we entered this group that nobody ever wants to enter, and that's a group of moms who lost their children. And it's tough. It's not a group you ever want to be a part of. But once you become that part, some people are looking for help. Some people don't want to talk about it. Everybody handles it differently. We can't forget the dads either. Sometimes everybody focuses on the moms. Like, oh, you know what? The moms are always close to their children. In most cases, maybe. But the dads are suffering too. And of course, the dads have to be the strong ones. Like, they can't cry. Most of them are like, I'm not going to cry. I'm a man. Some men cry, and that's okay. But for the most part, they feel like they have to be the strong one, and they have to support the wife, and they have to make sure that the family continues to grow and continues to move forward. They have different feelings than the moms. But I've met so many moms. I mean, I have a sister-in-law who lost her son. I have a sister whose son is in recovery right now. And we had Kyle. So it runs in our family, like we're dealing with it. And there's so many moms out there. I was able to speak to one mom, and she said, I don't understand how you can keep moving on, and you're talking about this, and don't you feel guilty laughing? And I'm like, I don't feel guilty laughing because that's what Kyle wants me to do. So that's one of the topics that we want to talk about. Let's interview some moms whose children are in recovery. I never had the experience that they have because Kyle died of an overdose without us even knowing. Like I said, there was no rehabs for Kyle. There was no stealing anything from us. There was nothing like that at all. So my story is much different. Sometimes I look at my story and think, gosh, I'm sad and I'm upset I lost Kyle, but is he in a better place now? Like, he's not suffering anymore. I'm not one of these parents who have to decide whether to keep my child in the house, kick them out, like put them in rehab. Are they going to come home tonight? Am I going to get that phone call? I didn't get that phone call. As you know, my family, my husband found my son, and his brothers tried to help save him, but I didn't get the phone call. But still, I lost him. But I'm empathetic, and I think of the parents who have to deal with this day in and day out. Could I have done it? So they're the parents I want to talk to. There's parents that I've met who have lost a child to addiction and have another child in recovery right now. So they're the people I want to talk to. Like, how do we keep moving on? How do we stop this? Because that's my end goal. How do we stop it? We can't stop it when they're in their 20s. We have to stop it. You heard Dominic in his story last week. He was in high school. Like, maybe we need to go to the junior high. We hear stories on TV. We hear stories everywhere that it's starting in the junior high. We need to stop it now before they start. And that's one of the goals. And so, one of the topics, like I said, is going to be the parents. The mothers. Let's talk to the mothers. Let's talk to the brothers and the sisters. We forget about them too. In any death, like losing a brother or sister, I can't speak on that because I have two sisters and they're both still alive today. But my kids lost a brother. What does that mean? Like, let's interview some kids. Like, how does that affect you? How does it affect the children who know that their brothers or sisters are using drugs and have to live in the house with the parents that are fighting because one doesn't want to kick them out and one wants to kick them out. Like this disease affects everybody. Like it affects the sisters, the brothers, it affects marriages. They say a crazy large amount of marriages don't last after the death of a child because it's a difficult thing to go through. And it's very hard. It's very stressful. It takes a lot of work, and sometimes it just doesn't work out, and it's sad. So there's just many things that we want to talk about. We're looking to talk to someone in a recovery house, someone who owns a recovery house or a sober house, like what they have to go through, the strict rules that they have to have. There are answers that we need to get, and if we can help somebody. So please, I know we have a couple people that have reached out. Again, we've not been around, but when we get back in the next day or two, we're going to be reaching out and setting up some appointments so that we can get some interesting podcasts. We don't want it to be you just hearing our story. We want to hear other people's stories. We want to hear topics. We have one coming up that's pretty interesting that Austin and I are excited to talk about, and that is we went to a medium, and I know some people are against that, and I was against that for a long time. And then again, when you lose a child, you get desperate sometimes. You have that bad moment and you're thinking, God, if I could just hear his voice or talk to him one more time, or somebody share with me that he's okay. So I ended up going to a medium, and that's an interesting story. Austin went, Dylan did not go. Joe went, and we're going to share that story for those people that are interested in that. It's kind of comical. For those that know Kyle, he yelled at me through the medium, 2 different times for something that I was doing. And we'll get into that in one of those stories. I'll let the suspense build on that one. So, we went to a meeting. We talked about that. I want to talk again, like I said, about the mothers and the kids. But also, like, what's the 12-step program? Like, what does that mean? What's the recovery house? Like, what's the sober living? Like, how do we move on? Like, how do these folks move on? I'm friends with several people, and it's like the stigma carries through their life. And the mistake that they made, and they're trying to get better, and it just carries through. Whether it's employment, it's all kinds of things. It's just going to the park and people looking at them, or assuming because you have tattoos, like you're that kind of person. So let's eliminate some of the stigma and educate people, because that education is going to be important. And we know there's going to be people out there that are going to be like, you know what, they get what they deserve. But in my case, I don't believe that. Nobody deserves to lose their child. Nobody deserves to lose a brother or sister. It happens, and we have to learn from it. We have to move forward. We got to get rid of the stigma. I don't want another parent to have to sit on a beach on vacation or walk on that beach and stare at the sky and think, okay, my son's with me, because it's tough. I mean, I'm having a great time on vacation. It's relaxing, but there's so many moments that just hit me. I mean, even to do this podcast, Austin's here today somewhere in the condo. I'm not sure. But when I said, okay, I'll do the podcast for this week, I started to cry. And he's like, oh, she's already getting emotional. And it's because it's an emotional day for me. But and like I said, it's okay to have those emotional days. It's okay to talk about them. Me personally, I just cry. And anybody that knows me can laugh. I just cry. I cry at work when somebody tells me a story. I cry when I'm in the shower. I think about it. I cry. Most of the time I cry. And I'm still strong. Everybody says, oh, you're so strong. Well, sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not. But I'm okay with it. I've learned that it's okay. And sometimes I don't cry. Sometimes I'm mad. I can remember the first day here, I was walking on the beach and I was cursing at Kyle. Like, why did you do this to us? Like, I don't understand why this had to happen. Like, you could have talked to me about this. Like, we could be happy right now. And so we get angry. And that's another thing we want to talk about. We get angry. It happens. I went to a meeting, not an AA meeting. It was just a regular open meeting. It was a group of people who have children or family members in addiction. It's the Not One More program meeting that I went to. And so I got to hear other stories. And it was interesting to hear because at that meeting, there was frustration. There was frustration. A mother was sitting there saying, oh, my son, he's such a jerk. Like, I don't want him in the house. I can't stand this anymore. I don't know what to do. And then I sat there and I was like, wow, you know what? Oh, gosh, I lost my son. And I would love for that. I would love for him to be here right now. And I sympathize with her because it must be a living hell for them. So I want to reach out to people that are going through that living hell right now. Like, where do you cut your kids off? Where do you finally draw the line? And I read things and I'm like, I don't know if I could have done that. You know, we knew Kyle did marijuana and Joe and I fought over that. Like, he was like, he can't live here. And I'm like, it's just marijuana. And then it just grows from there. And so there's so many people affected, so many different scenarios, so many different things. I can tell you, I'm feeling better just talking about it right now. So it's important to listen. If you're one of those friends and you're a true friend, like, just listen to someone. You know, they're just pouring their heart out. Like, you guys are getting it from me now. Sorry guys, but I just needed to get it out and I don't want to ruin everybody's vacation. So I'm sharing with the world, whoever wants to listen. Like, today is a sucky day for me. It's sucky, but you know what? I'm going to take a shower and we're going to get dressed and we're going to go to dinner and we're going to laugh again because that's what we do. And we'll talk about Kyle. We don't spend every day talking about Kyle, but we'll talk about Kyle at dinner tonight because that's what we'll do. We'll share a story. And so this podcast really doesn't have a topic. It's just me, like, giving you guys how I'm feeling today, sharing like where my mind's at. My mind's all over the place. I have so many people I want to talk to and so many stories. Not my story, not my kids' stories, but stories of people that can relate and understand. I got to talk to my nephew yesterday. He lives down here in Florida. He shared with me that he's 5 years clean. That's awesome. Like, I'm so proud of him. He's willing to help with these podcasts. I can't say enough for the people that stood up and reached out to us and said, I want to help you. And that's awesome. And that's what we want. We want you to help us because we're going to grow and we're going to learn from this as a family. But we want to help others too. Help the addict. Help the families of the addicts. Help people understand. Listen to the stories that you're going to hear. And most of you that aren't in tune to it or haven't lived through it are going to think, oh my gosh, these stories are like, I can't even comprehend them. Like, it's disturbing to me. And they're disturbing stories, but they're stories of people who are struggling and trying to get help, trying to get clean. And kudos to them. Like, kudos to the families that are struggling and still a family and talking about it. And if you talk about it, it's 10 times better to talk about it before you have to talk about it. Like, educate the young ones. It's not too young to say, don't do drugs, and make sure that they understand what does that mean, don't do drugs, because we're learning. Another topic we're going to talk about, and we're going to need help on this, is definitions. So people are talking and using verbiage like sponsor. What's a sponsor? What's the 12 steps? Like, what is that program? Is that the only program? Like, what's Vivitrol? So there's so many different things. So if you know anything and you can help us, like, reach out to us. Again, we're not doing this to make a profit. We're doing this to help others in memory of Kyle. So you're going to hear different experiences. You heard my beach story now. As you can tell by my voice, I'm getting better. So thank you for listening and thank you for letting me record this today and get it out of my system, because now I can smile, I can get in the shower and think about Kyle like, wow, like, okay, I'm not mad at you anymore, kid. So hug your kids, appreciate your kids, and help where you can. And we look forward to having some more entertaining topics. You won't have to listen to me ramble too many more times, but it's important just to get it out, and I'm just sharing with you. So thanks for the listening today. And hopefully next week we'll have another guest. I love the guests. It keeps me off the spot. Kyle's dad's working on a podcast. We shared with you that he has post-traumatic stress over this, and he's willing to finally sit down with Austin Austin's a great one in the family that can get you to talk. We were all nervous. Dylan likes to talk. Dylan makes us nervous. He's combative with us, which is a great thing. He challenges me, and I like that. You've heard that in the other podcasts. But Joe's willing to sit down with Austin and share his story of what happened in the morning, so that we can kind of complete that episode. So look forward to that, and also all the other topics that we're going to talk about. And again, thank you guys. I appreciate all the comments. It means the world to us that people are listening to us and, giving us some feedback so that we can get better. And our goal is every Sunday morning to have this. So if you're not getting a message from Podbean or whoever you're listening to us through, just remember that every Sunday morning it's going to be a podcast. It could be 15 minutes. It could be an hour. It could be an hour and a half. This one was just going to be a quick 15-minute one, honestly, where I was going to thank everybody just so that we could keep you guys on board and not skip a week because we were on a little mini vacation. So thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you soon, and have a great week.